They say if a red vacancy sign flickers 3 times after midnight on Route 189, don't stop. I didn't listen. Dust rose behind the truck, glowing orange in the moonlight. Then the storm arrived without warning, a solid wall of sand that just swallowed the stars. I slowed the truck until the road completely disappeared beneath a sea of gravel and wind. That's when I saw it. A faded neon sign fighting the storm. Sleep Easy Motel. 12 rooms. 1 car in the lot. Every single instinct screamed at me to keep driving, to just push through it. But the sand was chewing at my tires, and the thunder rolled close enough to rattle bone. I had no choice. Inside, the lobby was pure 1970s rot. The carpet was stained, a soda machine hummed in the corner, and the air had the metallic, coppery taste of dust. An old man stood behind the desk, wearing a denim jacket, his skin like old paper. He didn't offer a greeting, no smile, nothing, just the harsh scrape of a key across the worn-out counter. "Cash only," he rasped, his voice as dry as the desert outside. I paid him. He never even counted the bills. "Room 6, he whispered, leaning in slightly. "Try not to leave it after 2. He didn't smile back. The hallway smelled of ammonia and mold, a chemical stench that clung to the air. Every step I took echoed back twice, like someone was walking right behind me. Room 6 groaned open. Inside, there was a single bed, 1 bare bulb sputtering light like a dying insect. A rotary phone sat on the nightstand, its coiled cord looking like something alive, something that might move on its own. I was so tired I just collapsed onto the mattress and forced my eyes shut. But the wind outside kept whispering, twisting into layered voices that almost formed words I couldn't quite understand. I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I remember was the phone. It rang, a loud, piercing metal buzz that jolted me awake. I fumbled for it in the dark. "Hello?" I said. There was no response, only static and breathing. Human, slow, deliberate breathing on the other end. Click, then silence. The bulb in the lamp suddenly steadied, becoming too bright, flooding the small room with a harsh glare. I glanced at my watch, 1:58 a.m. 2 minutes. 2 minutes before whatever warning I'd ignored was supposed to happen. Then I heard it. Soft steps, but they were inside the wall, circling, dragging, waiting. A whisper brushed right past my ear, so close I felt it. "You shouldn't have taken his room." I spun around. Nothing. The curtain swelled with the storm, like a pair of lungs taking a deep breath. The phone rang again. This time, I answered because I felt like I had to. "Get out." It was a woman's voice, thin and cracking with fear. That's all it took. I grabbed my duffel bag and ran. The hallway doors, which were all closed before, now stood ajar by exactly 1 inch, a perfect row of black mouths watching me. At the far end of the hall, the old man stood completely still, his head tilting to the side like a broken camera. As I stared, every single door creaked open at once. A howl of wind rushed down the corridor from nowhere. I bolted through the exit, the sand slicing at my face as I sprinted to the truck. I threw it in gear, the engine screaming as the tires spun for traction. In the rearview mirror, the motel's sign glowed a steady, solid red, no flicker now, as if someone finally decided to keep the lights on. and in the window of room 6, I saw a shadow watching me drive away. Sand chased me for miles. It felt alive, like the storm itself was breathing down my neck. I kept my headlights locked on that thin strip of road until it finally split into a paved highway again. The motel's eerie glow faded into the darkness behind me. Dawn crept up slowly, a sour gray light that made the whole world look frozen and dead. When I finally pulled over for gas, I realized my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even manage to swipe my card. The attendant came out and asked if I'd been caught in the storm. I just nodded, my voice completely gone. At home, I spent days scrubbing the dust off my skin, off my clothes, off everything, but it was no use. Every time I closed my eyes to sleep, I heard that old rotary phone from the motel room ringing. That sharp metallic shriek cutting off just before the receiver slammed down. By the 4th night, I was trying to laugh it off, telling my friends it was just exhaustion, just sleeplessness making me jumpy. Then on Sunday morning, while unpacking, I found something in my duffel bag. Tucked between my work shirts was a dusty metal key tag, room 6. I was certain I'd left it on the desk. But here it was. Tied to it was a folded receipt from the motel, the paper already yellowed and crisp as if it were decades old. There was no handwriting, just one single printed line. Checkout time, never. I almost laughed again, thinking it was some kind of elaborate prank. But just then, the TV in my living room flickered on by itself. Its screen was pure static. That white and black snow hissing in perfect time with my own frantic heartbeat. I ripped the plug from the wall. The snow kept playing. My phone lit up next, showing no signal. Just a blur of numbers cycling endlessly until they froze on 1:58 a.m., the exact time I'd woken up in that room. That was when the cold dread washed over me. Time itself had followed me home. A thin, high-pitched buzz started to fill the room. The unmistakable sound of that broken light bulb from room 6, and then the key in my hand began to vibrate. Whispers rose from beneath the noise, a chilling choir of breaths all saying my name, but they were coming from inside walls that weren't even there. I couldn't take it. No storm, no clouds, but the air still tasted metallic, like copper and ozone. That's when a light flared behind me. I turned around to see every single window in my house glowing a deep pulsing red. It lasted for exactly 5 seconds and then cut to absolute black. No neighbors stirred. No security lights came on. There was only the buzzing, now faint, drifting away to the east, back in the direction of Route 189. That night, sleep was impossible. By morning, my fear had given way to a dangerous curiosity. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was losing my mind, or someone was playing a really sick joke on me. I had to know. I opened an old road atlas, looking for Route 189. The section around mile 45 was just a blank patch of desert. No roads, no towns, no motel. But as I closed the atlas, a single grain of sand fell from between its pages. It landed on the table, and somehow I could feel its warmth from a foot away. The motel wasn't done with me, and I knew I had to go back. For a month, curiosity was a slow burn, but it won. Every single night, that motel key rattled in my desk drawer. A faint, insistent tap of metal against wood, like it was waiting for me. And then the radio. At 2 a.m. on the dot, it would click on all by itself, whispering static that slowly, impossibly, started to shape itself into a single word: back. That was the last straw. By sunrise, the truck was packed. I kept telling myself I was just going back for proof, to confirm the place wasn't some fever dream. But that was only half the truth. What I really wanted was closure, an end to the story. The drive out was normal, just endless desert stretching under a pale sky. But then, right around mile marker 44, everything changed. The air felt like it had thickened, pressing in on the truck. I glanced at my dashboard compass and saw it spin wildly for a second, as if north had suddenly vanished. The exit should have been right there, the one that led to the motel. But there was nothing, just flat sand, empty sky. Even the road signs were gone, erased. It was like it had never existed. I pulled over and got out, the sun already beating down. I walked maybe 50 yards off the highway, my boots sinking into the warm sand, and that's when I heard it again. That low, steady buzz, humming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It vibrated right through the solace of my shoes. My eyes scanned the horizon, and something glinted, catching the sunlight. A small, dark rectangle, half buried. I knelt down, digging it free with my fingers. It was a motel key tag, rusted, corroded, but the number was still visible. Number 6. As I was crouched over it, the temperature plummeted. It was sudden, unnatural. No wind, just a wave of intense cold washing over the desert, pouring down from an empty sky. The sand in front of me seemed to flatten, to ripple, and for a split second, I saw it. The entire motel lot took shape in the heat mirage. 12 doors, a single flickering sign with its red letters burning steady and bright against the haze. And then, just as quickly, it was gone, vanished back into the shimmer of the heat. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. No signal, of course. But the screen wasn't blank. It flickered with staticky lines like a tiny old television set losing its signal. Through the glitches, a face started to form. It was there for less than a second, but it was unmistakable. It was my face, but it wasn't me. This version of me was standing behind a motel front desk, wearing a faded uniform and smiling this wide, unsettling smile. I dropped the phone. The sand swallowed half of it before I could snatch it back up. The screen was normal again, battery at 100%. The clock read 1:58 a.m. even though the midday sun was blazing right above me. I scrambled back towards the truck, my heart hammering against my ribs. And behind me, a sound that made my blood run cold. A door slammed shut, loud, solid, echoing across the open desert. I spun around, expecting to see something. But there was nothing, just ripples of heat dancing over the sand. And then I saw it, a shadow moving against the blinding light. A tilted, shimmering shape like a man in a denim jacket, half there, half transparent. He lifted a hand and he pointed, not at me, but straight up, towards the sun. When I could see again, I was in the driver's seat of my truck. The engine was running. Sand coated the pedals under my feet. The fuel gauge showed half a tank was gone, but I could have sworn I'd only just arrived. On the passenger seat, there was a plain brown envelope. Inside, there was an old photograph, the paper still warm to the touch, It was a picture of the motel doorway. I was holding a set of keys, offering them to someone just out of sight. Scrawled across the bottom of the photo in messy red ink were 7 words. Try not to leave after 2. Stay tuned for the next part of the story, and remember to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Thanks for listening. Meet Marissa Cole, an urban explorer who lives for the stories no one else dares to chase. Her channel is a goldmine for anyone who loves places that shouldn't exist. So when old-timer truckers started whispering online about a motel that moves through dust, she was already packing her gear and heading for New Mexico. She drove until the cell signal vanished and the sky turned a flat, burnt copper. Her GPS map jittered, spun twice, and then just froze on Route 189, and that's when it happened. It felt like the land itself was bending, and out of the heat haze, a sign appeared right where the road should have ended. A battered neon shimmer. Sleep Easy Motel. 3 bulbs were dead. 1 pulsed a weak, ominous red. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind as she spoke to her camera. Hitting that record button always made her feel a little less alone, a little braver. She parked the car. There were no other vehicles, not even the sound of birds, just the constant whisper of the wind. This is incredible footage, she thought. Her Sony's autofocus struggled for a moment as she panned across the building's facade. 12 doors, all identical, all perfectly aligned, except one. Room 6 was slightly ajar. Curiosity, as it always did, won out over fear. She grabbed the knob and pushed the door open. The air inside smelled thick, like copper and rain, which was impossible. The sky hadn't seen a drop of rain for months. A clunky old TV faced the wall. Dust coated every single surface, except for one spot on the dresser. A clear swirl, a spiral smudge, as if someone had just traced it with their fingertip only hours ago. Marissa lifted the camera, starting a slow, dramatic tracking shot. But the red record light flickered, dimmed, and died completely. She checked the battery. 80%. She blinked. Now it read 1%. The screen gave one last shudder before falling into total blackness. Silence. Then, all at once, the hallway lights outside snapped on with a loud crack. Buzzing white fluorescent tubes stretched down a corridor that seemed to go on forever. She grabbed her backup DSLR. Its flash strobed every time she took a step forward, freezing each moment like a single frame from someone else's nightmare. In one flash, the long corridor was empty. In the next, a shape stood at the far end, half turned toward her, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. She lowered the camera, her breath catching in her throat. She looked again. Nothing there. Another flash still gone. Marissa forced a shaky laugh for her imaginary audience. "Probably just a weird reflection," she murmured, trying to convince herself more than anyone. But she kept filming, walking slowly toward the front desk, where the buzzing sound grew louder and louder. The lobby was a snapshot stuck in time, unchanged from some forgotten decade. Behind the counter sat a dust-covered rotary phone, and its dial ring was glowing with a dim, pulsing red light. Creepy prop department, she thought, trying to rationalize it, and then the phone rang, just once. A single sharp ring that echoed forever through the empty rooms. Her camera picked it up perfectly, a short, metallic ping followed by a voice. It was so quiet, she didn't catch it at first. It was only later, during playback, that she would hear the word, clear as a knife's edge, checked in. She turned off the recording. For the first time in a long, long time, the adrenaline felt wrong. It wasn't excitement. It was dread. Outside, the clouds of dust had started to swirl in the twilight, like ghostly figures dancing in slow, deliberate circles around her car. The longer I stood in the lobby, the heavier the air felt, like it had actual weight. The red glow from the old rotary phone on the counter pulsed, like a warning beacon deep underwater. I stepped closer, dust swirling around my ankles. There on the desk was a small leather notebook. The edges were burnt, the corners curled up. The cover read, "Guest Book." My camera buzzed to life again, a low hum breaking the silence. I hit record and flipped the cover open. Page after page held names scrawled in dark, messy ink, and every single one was crossed out with the same brutal crimson streak. All of them, except for the very last line, "Evan Price, stay indefinite." My stomach twisted. I didn't know that name, but a weird sense of familiarity washed over me. Right below it, a blank line waited, with an uncapped pen resting perfectly on top of it. Something moved at the edge of my vision, a quick vertical shape behind the desk. I swung the camera that way, but the screen exploded into static. For just a split second, I caught the outline of a man. He was tall, wearing what looked like a denim jacket, standing as still as a statue. "Hello?" My voice echoed through the empty motel, bouncing off the walls like a desperate radar ping. No sound came back, but the phone lit up again. One long, drawn-out ring, then silence. Curiosity has always been louder than fear for me, so I picked it up. "Who is this?" I asked. Static crackled on the line. Then a faint male voice, barely a whisper, came through. Not who, when. My heart started hammering against my ribs. "What do you mean, when?" The voice grew sharper, more urgent, grainy with panic. "Check the photo on the wall." My camera flash went off, illuminating a framed print behind the counter. It was a shot of this very lobby from this same angle. The same room, the same phone. But there was a man in the picture, holding a key out towards the camera. I zoomed in. My breath hitched in my throat. The man in the photo was the same silhouette I'd just seen. Evan Price, and his face was staring right at me, looking through decades of dust and time. The line went dead. My camera screen glitched. Numbers rolling through the timestamp like a slot machine before freezing on 1:58 a.m. all at once. The hallway lights dimmed to a blood red, and every single door down the hall banged shut in perfect unison. The sound raced towards me like an oncoming train. I grabbed the guest book, shoved it into my bag, and ran for the front door. It wouldn't budge. It was locked solid. Outside the windows, the sandstorm I'd driven through was no longer just sand. It was alive. Faces were forming in the swirls, twisting and screaming in silence. And then one voice rose above the chaos, the same deep tone from the phone. But now it was shaking the very air around me, coming from everywhere at once. "Please, take my place." I keep slamming my shoulder into the door, but it won't budge. My arms are just numb now, totally useless. Outside, the world is gone. That red haze, that unnatural crimson fog, has completely swallowed the sky, the cars, everything. And then, silence. Something is very, very wrong. I press my face against the window, trying to see anything, and my heart just stops. The parking lot is gone. The storm, the sand, all of it. In its place is a long, impossible corridor stretching out into nowhere. Just then, the front desk behind me starts rattling violently. The old guest book I grabbed, the one I stuffed into my bag for evidence, it starts to move. It thumps once against the inside of my bag, then slides out all on its own. It lands on the floor, flipping open to a blank page. And then, right before my eyes, ink begins to bleed into the paper, forming letters. My name, Marissa Kolchecking confirmed. My blood runs cold. I stumble backward, grabbing my camera, but the record light is already on. It turned itself on. Every step I take now echoes twice. One real footstep and a second one, slightly delayed, like a ghost is walking just behind me. I have to know what's happening, so I run. I run toward the hallway that shouldn't be there, the one that replaced the world. The door numbers are a blur. They make no sense. Room 10, then 11, then 13, then 6, and then 6 again and again. It's an infinite, repeating loop. Not possible, I whisper, my voice shaking. My camera feels heavy in my hand, but I keep it pointed forward. This has to be recorded, and that's when I see him. Standing in the middle of this impossible hallway is a man. His skin is ashen gray like old cigarette ash, and his eyes, they're filled with this profound, ancient sadness. He's wearing a denim jacket that seems to shimmer like it's not quite solid. It's Evan Price, the man from the photos, the one who disappeared. He speaks, but his lips don't move. His voice just appears in my head, echoing like the hallway itself. It feeds on replacement. I take a shaky step closer. You're Evan. He nods, slow and deliberate. The air around him crackles with static. I tried to leave mine. My camera pans slightly, and behind him I see them. Dozens of figures, their faces blurred and indistinct. All of them. What does it want? I ask, my voice barely a whisper. Evan's ghostly form flickers again. To exist, he says. Even if we don't. At that moment, the entire building shudders. A deep, guttural groan comes from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. And then every single door in the hallway bursts open at once. A tidal wave of that same terrifying red light floods out, rushing toward me. But Evan doesn't run. He just reaches his hand forward. In his palm is a single heavily rusted key. Take this, he urges, his voice desperate. It ends if someone keeps the lights on. I don't even have time to think. My hand reaches out, my fingers brushing against the cold, corroded metal of the key. The second I touch it, the world snaps shut. The walls of the hallway collapse in on us like a camera shutter closing, faster than I can even blink. There's a flash of blinding white pain, a single searing moment of agony, and then nothing, just darkness. When I open my eyes, the pain is gone. I'm sitting down. The old worn-out chair from behind the front desk creaks beneath me. I'm back in the lobby. I look down at my camera, resting on the counter. It's covered in a thick layer of dust, as if it's been sitting here for years. I look up through the grimy, streaked window. Outside, the sky is a familiar morning gray. The red haze is gone. The impossible hallway is gone. It's just Route 189 again. And then I see it. A single car, pulling in off the highway, its headlights cutting through the dawn. It rolls to a stop right next to the vacancy sign, which has started to flicker back to life. A new guest has arrived, and I'm the one behind the desk. The morning sun baked the desert, bleaching the landscape clean. Two route maintenance workers, Rudy and Blake, were out checking drainage pipes along mile 45. Coffee in hand, orange vests bright against the sand. They were just going through the motions until Blake pointed out fresh tire tracks cutting into the sand where no tracks should be. The older man, Rudy, squinted into the distance. "Can't be from today," he muttered. "We closed this stretch last year." Blake just shrugged. Guess someone didn't get the memo. Curiosity got the better of them. They followed the tracks 100 yards off the road, where they found a surprise. Half buried in the sand sat a modern DSLR camera, oddly wrapped in a torn flannel shirt. Rudy picked it up, wiped the grit from the lens, and clicked the play button. The small screen flickered to life. A woman's voice, her breath shaky, narrated as the camera moved through what looked like a motel hallway, a place neither of them recognized, a place not on any map. The wind howled through the camera's microphone. Then the video cut to a still image, a dusty front desk, a vintage rotary phone, and a sign burning with a steady, eerie red light. "That's gotta be a movie set," Blake said, trying to rationalize it. "But where?" Rudy didn't answer right away. He pointed at the screen, then at the world around them. The background of the video, the horizon line, it was an exact match to where they were standing. Same jagged ridge of cacti, same curve of the abandoned road. The only thing missing was the motel itself. They turned in a slow, confused circle. The wind suddenly picked up, throwing sand into their eyes, making them sting. Just then, the camera screen glitched. For a split second, their own reflections appeared on the display, but they weren't standing in the desert. They were behind the motel's front desk. Blake dropped the camera in shock. "Tell me you saw that." Rudy frowned, trying to stay calm. Must be some kind of playback lag. He reached down to switch it off, to just end this weirdness. But as his finger touched the button, the speaker crackled. A woman's faint voice whispered through the static, a chillingly clear message: "Don't leave it after 2. They backed away slowly, their boots sinking into the sand. The wind howled again, but underneath it, another sound surfaced, the very distant, unmistakable ringing of a telephone. Blake spun around, his eyes wide. Is there a house out here? But Rudy was already walking back to the truck, his face grim. "Call it in," he ordered. "Then we're gone." He yanked open the truck door. But before he could grab his own radio, the one on the dashboard hissed and spat out a distorted male voice, formal and cold. "Maintenance log. New entry. Evan Price, indefinite." The younger worker ran up behind him. "Who's Evan Price?" Rudy didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, where waves of heat began to warp the air, distorting the familiar landscape. And for just half a second, both men saw it. A 2-story shadow, dust gray and flickering with a malevolent red light, shimmered into existence before vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Back on the sand, the camera they'd left behind beeped one final time. Its red record light started flashing all by itself. And in the dark reflection of its screen, a new face lined up behind them, the smiling, ghostly outline of a woman holding a camera, watching them through the dust. Thanks for watching. If you want to see what happens next, be sure to subscribe. They say there's no motel out there, but every storm season, drivers see lights. Some even stop. If you see that red vacancy sign blink 3 times after midnight, keep driving. The lobby is empty except for the front desk and the guest book. A new name appears on its open page in fresh ink. Blake Turner. Stay. Pending. The camera pans to the window. Its radio light still glows green. The view shifts as if seen from somewhere inside the storm itself. A line of silhouettes stands behind the glass. Evan, Marissa, the unnamed travelers, the workers, all motionless, all watching. Footage retrieved from unknown source, mile 44, route 189. Checkout time never. If this made you check your clock, hit like before 2 a.m. Comment which room you'd survive, and follow for more stories that never let you check out.